Inshallah, today we have a special guest from Canada, but now he is a visiting professor in ISTEC. Now it's the second year already, right, Prof? Now in your second year in the ISTEC?
In my second year in ISTEC,
Prof, let me introduce Professor Jasser a little bit. His latest contribution is new Maqasid methodology. He is the president of Maqasid Institute Global, a think tank registered and building research and educational project in a number of countries. He is also Al-Shatibi Chair for Maqasid Studies at the International Peace University of South Africa, founding and board member of International Union for Muslim Scholars, an executive member of the Fiqh Council of North America, a member of European Council for Fatwa and Research, and the chairman for the Canadian Fiqh Council. Okay, now it become the interesting part. He has a PhD in the philosophy in Islamic law from the University of Wales, UK, and also a PhD in system analysis, which is mean that he has engineering background, so that like us, hopefully he can enlighten us how to connect this Islamization as well as the engineering parts that we try to put into our education system. Alright, so I think without further ado, I think I leave the floor to Prof. Jasser.
السلام عليكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على أسعد خلقه وخاتم رسله محمد صلى الله عليه وآله رضي الله عن المهاجرين والأنصار ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين ثم أما بعد. I am really grateful for this invitation. I really thank you for inviting me. It is always such a pleasure and such an emotional experience to be back in an engineering college lecturing. My brother mentioned that I have a background in engineering. Not so many people who read my books or so know this. And perhaps I will give a bit of a personal experience or personal story as part of this lecture, because I think is relevant to the question that you asked me to answer, that has to do with Islamization and engineering. I graduated from Cairo University back in the 80s with communication engineering, if I remember the name of the degree. And I did a master's in computer engineering back again in Cairo University. And then the 90s I spent in Canada. Started by studying computer science and then shifting to systems analysis and design, like my brother mentioned. I got my PhD in. When I got into the systems analysis and design, I started to go multidisciplinary. So until that time, I had a schizophrenia. I was someone who memorized the Quran in Al-Azhar and studied fiqh and hadith and so on. I think I spent more time studying Islamic sciences than the engineering sciences, but then they were two different worlds. They were two different planets. You go to Al-Azhar, then the mashayikh are taking us to a different century, memorizing the books. Since you are Shafi'iyya here, I studied fiqh al-Shafi'iyya and memorized the parts at that time of Hawashi, Qalyub, Umayra, and Minhaj al-Talibin. And I lived in a very different Cairo from the Cairo that I lived in when I was in the Faculty of Engineering, working on this new communication engineering, and then eventually I did a master's on neural networks and AI and so on. It was very new at that time. You're talking about 1988 and so on, 87, when artificial intelligence was just a new thing, and especially neural networks, etc. We would go to the main computer in the main building to send an email or to work on Fortran programs and so on. And then when I went to this multidisciplinary program in University of Waterloo, And I was in a lab, by the way, pattern analysis and machine intelligence lab. This is the lab where I got my PhD. It is the lab that produced BlackBerry, if you know BlackBerry. Some of my friends and colleagues at that time founded RIM, R-I-M, BlackBerry, and now they're billionaires, of course. I studied philosophy, and I decided to take the philosophical routes. They worked in RIM, and some other friends also from the same lab worked on the NASA robotic arm, which was developed by Canada in that lab, in the machine analysis, pattern analysis machine intelligence lab. My first encounter of something that is not machine with engineering was in that lab when we decided not to use Microsoft and not to use Mac. And therefore, we worked with, was it OS2? I would not remember because I don't speak about engineering for now 30 years or so. But we worked with Linux at that time as an open source so that we can have our own operating system, because we did not trust Microsoft and we did not trust Mac with our equipment. It was a major lab, as I mentioned. We had like about 80 PhD students at that time working on different sides of systems. And at that time, we wanted to make a difference through the operating systems and so on. So that was the first time I started to bridge the two worlds I'm living in, the world of Islamic studies. By that time, when I was in Canada, I started to be involved with the MSA, Muslim Student Association, and Da'wah and so on, and I was involved in a number of activities. And I started to see through the Da'wah work that we need, as Muslims, to have defense for our civilization and our way of life from the attack at that time. At that time, we were in the 90s. 9/11 was not there yet. And 9/11 obviously changed a lot of things in terms of the opportunities of Islam in the West. But at that time, we thought that we were a number of Muslim students. Actually, most of these PhD students at the University of Waterloo, and most of the faculty. Then I graduated and I started teaching in Waterloo in '96. I taught pattern analysis and machine intelligence back in '96. Most of us were Muslim anyway. Maybe 50 out of those 60 PhDs were Muslim. And all of us are working in the bigger machine of developing AI at that time, developing Bluetooth technology was one of the things that our lab worked on. Many of us eventually worked in Intel and Silicon Valley and others. I ended up teaching in Waterloo, and I resigned when the university wanted me to take a grant from the Pentagon to work on smart machines, smart weapons. At that time, I had a grant from NATO, but it was on medical research, has to do with detecting eye aneurysms and stuff, rather than something military. But then I started to realize that the area of AI, I developed a neural network at that time called modular neural network, the idea, and I did the math of it. That was my PhD. And in order to do that, I had to study a number of other disciplines, because that was not purely engineering, systems science, and then you had to take courses from other courses. So I took courses in technology transfer and management systems, and I took courses in theology at that time. I was very interested in the Dead Sea Scrolls and archaeology, so I spent some of my time as a PhD student doing that. I also took courses in neuroscience, or I had the foundation of neuroscience since I was working in neural networks, and I borrowed a modular design from the virtual cortex or the visual cortex at that time. So when I started to realize that I am a small part of a bigger machine, and that bigger machine is not benign, is actually directed towards the goals of the empire. I started to be a Western citizen from '93, I became Canadian, and therefore I started to understand where I'm living, the political context, the economic context. Years at Waterloo were really, I'm really grateful for them because of the education that I had. Spent nights just sitting in the library reading politics, economics, strategic management, media, Jewish lobbies, you name it, that I wanted to study. I studied at the University of Waterloo. And I had the resources to do that through the courses and through the library at that time. By the end of the PhD, and when they gave me that position in the university, I realized that I am a small part of a bigger machine. And I had to make a major decision, plus many other personal factors, etc. A major decision whether to be part of that bigger machine and listen to my supervisor, rahimahullah. I was a Muslim, who told me at that time, supervisor, also of my assistant professorship. And he told me, why don't you learn and then benefit Muslims with what you learn about AI, even about weapons? Why don't we take that grant from the Pentagon and work on it? At that time, I went back to Cairo for 3 months, visited the Ministry of Scientific Research at that time. I was offered to work there, and I completed the picture by going around in Cairo in different universities and ministries and realizing that the battle is deeper than one person. I cannot just go and learn AI and eventually become a visiting professor somewhere in the Arab world and perhaps give them the technology in order to develop their weapons. From the time I landed in Egypt, I was approached by a number of embassies, without mentioning names, to spy for them on the government of Egypt because I'm specialized in some AI technology. And I realized that this is not going to be good. Eventually, I decided to complete my Islamic studies, and I left Canada. I went to the Emirates, where at that time I was doing a bachelor's in Islamic studies in America and an Islamic university there in Detroit. I finished that, and then I went to the Emirates. I did my master's in Usul al-Fiqh, which was my favorite subject. And until that time, I still had the schizophrenia. I started to see how engineering could be Islamized, but I was still doing both because the last thing that I taught in engineering, intelligent systems and so on, was not Islamized by any means. In the Emirates, I went there to teach engineering, but somehow they lost one of their philosophy professors. So soon they gave me philosophy courses to teach when they knew that I had some philosophy in my PhD training. And therefore I was teaching philosophical ethics and logic and reasoning, philosophy. And I was also doing some admin work. I was the chair of the Department of Computer Engineering, just doing admin work and teaching philosophy. And then through the ethics, teaching engineering ethics was the first time. I didn't take engineering ethics before, neither in Cairo University nor in Canada. But then when I started to teach engineering ethics, I started to make the links. And since at that time I was doing my master's in Usul al-Fiqh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also judged that I go to England in 2004 now and live in London for a number of years, working on something called Maqasid Sharia Center that was founded by some of our ustad there, notably Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi. I knew him from the time when I was active in the 90s in the Islamic work in America. We used to invite him, etc. So they made me work on Maqasid al-Sharia as a research center because I had a master's in Maqasid al-Sharia at that time. But at that time, I applied and I did my PhD on that topic in University of Wales. It was too Islamic for the Viva committee, so they failed me. And then they asked me to compare Maqasid al-Sharia with Habermas and Jani and a few like Western philosophy of law people in order to give me a degree in Islamic law. And therefore, I changed my PhD and I wrote on Habermas, etc. And then after that, I published my books after I removed everything about these guys, Habermas and Jani and what's his name, and so on. So it was quite a journey when then I started to work on Maqasid al-Sharia, and I started to see the links. Why don't we work towards the objectives of Maqasid al-Sharia? Why don't we, like that engineering that I had as a career by that time, 2005, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, why don't we work on achieving Maqasid al-Sharia through engineering? So I was fascinated by Darurat wal-Hajat wal-Tahsiniyat at that time, and حفظ الدين والنفس والعقل والمال والأرض and so on, etc. I, at that time, was an associate professor actually of Islamic studies in Alexandria University back in Egypt, going back and forth from London. And that's how I ended up in Qatar, being a professor of Islamic studies from 2010. In Qatar, we tried to link the Islamic studies with the real sciences. I was involved in something called Islamic Ethics Center, bring in scholars of the text and the context, etc., in order to come up with, integration of knowledge, Islamization. I was a student of the Islamization school from a long time, actually, from the 80s. My favorite and most influential sheikh on me was Sheikh Muhammad Ghazali, rahimahullah, back in Egypt. And I heard about the Islamization from Sheikh Ghazali. And I was fascinated with the idea. At that time, I was a student of engineering. And I thought, well, can we Islamize everything? Can we Islamize engineering and so on? And then in the 90s, I was told that no, Sheikh Ghazali even told us that no, Islamization is not for sciences and engineering. It's only for social sciences and humanities. So الفلسفة وعلم الاجتماع وعلم النفس and psychology, etc. But not necessarily. So even at that time, our Sheikh rahimahullah, and eventually when I worked with Sheikh Qaradawi, that school, that Azhari school, did not think that engineering has anything to do with Islam, more than perhaps some applications, and that at that time it was just if you want to Islamize, then Islamize psychology, etc. I started in the 90s to read the books of our Ustad, Dr. Abdul Hamid Abu Sliman, and eventually Sheikh Tal Alwani was part of my PhD supervision in my PhD University of Wales. So we started to have this, and at that time they were saying that Islamization is not for sciences, but rather for social sciences, or the social sciences part of sciences. It was a long journey afterwards in different universities, different countries. After my PhDs, I actually taught in a dozen countries. University of Brunei, Dar es Salaam, in South Africa, I still have my position there. In Qatar, I was with Cambridge at some point when I was in the UK as a research associate, etc. Back to Canada, University of Carleton, Ryerson, and so forth. Through that journey, I started to realize that Islamization is not just possible for engineering, it is essential. And perhaps I could, in the time allowed, I'm really grateful that you're giving me an hour to speak, because this is something that needs to be elaborated. I'm really grateful for your time. that maybe we can put the Islamic approach to engineering in those 5 levels that I have on that screen. Alhamdulillah that I was able to put this up for you this morning in order to think about the question of Islamization. First of all, I don't believe in Islamic anything. Engineering is engineering, economics is economics. When we say economics, we should just say economics, not Islamic economics. And the others are supposed to say whatever they want: capitalist economics, socialist economics, secular economics, atheist economics, whatever they want. But economics, is ours, and engineering is ours, and so forth. And if you look at how the Renaissance developed, it actually developed based on our engineering, in optics engineering, in astronomy, in architecture, whatever kind of engineering we had, hydraulics, all of this was ours. But then they took our technology and they added those 5 levels from their perspective on the technology, and that's how they had the Renaissance and the development that they had in Europe afterwards. We, at this time of our civilization, we are at a low point, obviously, as Muslims, but we're starting to rise. I believe that the jihad that is happening in Palestine is the beginning of the rise of this ummah. Eventual rise, not necessarily next year, but eventually, maybe not in my lifetime personally, but eventually our ummah will rise and our ummah will start to build a civilization again. We have to build our civilization on the best they had, and we have to redefine our civilization based on the latest they had, not the latest we produced. Remember Bayt al-Hikmah and Buyut al-Hikmah in different parts, and how we developed technology and medicine and literature and philosophy and architecture, you name it. We did not develop from the previous history of the Arabs or of the pharaohs. We took the best that the Greeks had to offer, and the Indians, and whatever. The Europeans didn't have much at that time. We took the best, Western Europe, we took the best of what the civilization had to offer, and we actually built on that. But we redefined. Read Imam al-Ghazali, for example, how he redefined logic. It is Greek logic, but he gave it different names. He filtered out a few things that he found contradictory with the Islamic worldview, and he introduced an ala, or an organon, a different organon, in which he is trying to make a foundation for usul al-fiqh and for tarikh and for al-kalam. Al-Ghazali was a pioneer in the sense that he took the best that the Greeks had to offer at that time, and he was a Greek philosopher in that sense. Abu Hamid Ghazali. But then eventually he built a different science, he built a different paradigm. And it is essential that we remove this Islamic and we work on engineering as engineering. It is essential to know that Islamization, if you want to call it this way, I prefer to call it an Islamic approach to engineering, Islamic approach to psychology. It is not really disciplinary. It has to be transdisciplinary, not just multidisciplinary. Multidisciplinarism is a step towards transdisciplinarism. Once you go multidisciplinary, you are deconstructing the discipline. You are going beyond what they call the epistemological boundaries of the discipline. You are not an engineer anymore if you mix engineering with history or philosophy or political science or psychology, and you are making a machine that has to do with a medical application. This is not engineering anymore, because you have to understand the medical application and you have to also act as a doctor. You are producing a machine that is going to have an impact on the patient, is going to be a part of the process. And therefore, we cannot really talk about one discipline or engineering only. That's why I will speak to you today about economics, politics. I'll speak a bit of philosophy, because it is not possible to develop disciplines from within disciplines. Disciplines are designed in order to serve the market. They are not designed for knowledge. That's Western civilization. Western paradigm, we developed science for the sake of science, ilm, al-ilm. We have a Quranic concept that's called al-ilm, or knowledge, al-ma'rifah, to know something new. And we developed science because we believed in Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. We believed in science. We are Muslims. Our civilization did not tie science with the market. It tied science with the objectives of science. So you become a doctor so that you cure patients. That's the objective. Being a doctor today is not for curing patients. It's for the pharmaceutical and medical economic objectives. This is market. This is market speaking. And people discover cures for cancer, and they are murdered in America and in France and even in Western countries because some companies do not want a cure for cancer from some plant, or that French guy recently murdered in a French university because he discovered how to make a car run on water. Some of you from engineering here will probably hear about it. And they murdered him because they don't want cars to run on water. They want cars to run on oil and maybe electricity, but that's going to be developed eventually. In a particular, we do not work in engineering as a discipline separate from the politics of it, the economics of it, the psychology, the application, and so forth. So we have to go multidisciplinary and then transdisciplinary in the sense that our approach should go beyond the approaches of disciplines and the methodologies. When you teach methodology in engineering, you either teach one of two things. You either teach like basic social sciences, a la Durkheim or whatever, interviews and questionnaires and these things, or you teach philosophy. But I don't know if you have a methodology course here, maybe not. But methodology is actually beyond the philosophical ethics and beyond the social sciences stuff of self-identification. This is the heart of Western social sciences, but we are not supposed to be concerned about that. We're supposed to rise above disciplines and have a methodology that does not belong to any of the approaches that we study. I believe that at the core of this, before I get into the 5 levels, at the core of this should be the Quran. We, for many reasons, historical and political and cultural, we have fiqhized Islam. We have made Islam only about fiqh. And of course, fiqh is part of Islam. I'm a professor of Sharia. I teach fiqh and usul fiqh and comparative fiqh and Maqasid Sharia. But fiqh in the legislative sense is not equal to Islam. It's a small part of Islam. It's the ethics, if you wish. I will say it under ethics here. So haram and halal is under that. But Islam is a much bigger paradigm. It's a paradigm of defining everything in the world, from the matter to the environment, from the water to the skies, from the machines to the human. Islam is a bigger paradigm than the fiqh paradigm. Why are we stuck in fiqh? That's because of colonization. And at the time of decline of our Muslim civilization, Islam started to leave many areas. From the 1st century, we left the area of politics and we separated the umara from the ulama. Those are fuqaha and those are umara. During the Khilafah al-Rashida, umara was fuqaha, was the same thing. They were ulama and they were leaders of the state. We separated Islam from politics from towards the end of the 1st century, Hijri, and then eventually, during the high time of Islamic civilization, we had a Islam about everything. If you read the productions of Bayt al-Hikmah, Al-Jahid Al-Hayawan, for example, you find Al-Jahid writing in the beginning of the book that this is a book of fiqh. He is writing fiqh. It is a book of anatomy, Hayawan, and he is making anatomy of different species and classifying animals, zoology, if you wish. But he considered this to be fiqh. Read Ibn Rushd and his medicine. He's also calling it fiqh. فقه الطب، فقه التطبب. In fact, the doctor in the hospitals of the past used to be called faqih. فقيه النفس or فقيه البدن، فقيه النجوم، فقيه العمارة، فقه العمارة. We had books called فقه العمارة or the fiqh of architecture. So engineering was a branch of fiqh, really. So in our civilization. Why? Because when we approach life, the ethics of it, the halal and the haram, of course, is part of the Islam, of our deen, but it is not how we define deen. The colonials, because they are secular people and they define deen only through the church and through maybe particular family laws, etc., they wanted us to embrace their paradigm. And therefore they changed our paradigm from the comprehensive Islamic paradigm into a secular paradigm. They separated not only the government, they separated everything from Islam except for ibadat. You go to the masjid and pray, and you do hajj and so on. They even separated zakah. The Russians made zakah in the Soviet Union, which was Muslim. They made zakah part of taxes. The English made sure that they destroyed the awqaf. People don't know what awqaf is now, waqaf here in this part of the world. And the French canceled the awqaf altogether from Tunisia and from other countries. They made sure that they crack down on what's in Islam that has to do with life, with the state, with technology, with the institutions. They separated hospitals from awqaf, and hospitals became part of the pharma and medical industry rather than being part of the awqaf. Before, as a doctor, you did not work for money, you worked for a salary, but you worked for a waqf. You did not work for an industry. As an engineer, you worked for a waqf usually. Of course, there was some trade in buildings and so on, but the vast majority of economy in places, historical places like North Africa, the Anadolu's, Turkey, Iraq, 70% of the economy, some people reached up to 90% of the economy was awqaf economy. And therefore, you work, yes, but for charity. And the charity is given by people in their wasiyah because they inherit 2/3, but 1/3 goes to charity. The majority of the economy was in charity, and therefore most of the institutions, including institutions where professional work, doctors, engineers, etc., they were teaching, universities, you name it, they were awqaf. And therefore it is essential not to be tied to one discipline and to look at other disciplines. And it is essential to put the Quran at the core of your approach. And I'll try to explain some of that in the time as it allows. Let me go 5 levels of an Islamic approach to engineering. It is not true, as I personally heard in faculties of engineering, and perhaps maybe I taught that at some point in my youth, that engineering has nothing to do with Islam. Engineering has everything to do with Islam on 5 levels. One is the level of ethics, the ethics of engineering. 2, the level of economics. 3, the level of politics. 4, the level of objectives. And 5, the levels of paradigm. And this is just my own, division of topics. The level of ethics, we have 2 levels. The relationship between engineering and Islam has 2 levels. One is the level of humanity. Human ethics, normally, like just to be honest, if you have a contract for a building, you make the building as the standards are. You don't make people die because you stole the iron or whistleblowing. You see someone stealing something from the company. This is humanity. This is not just Muslims. Justice, you hire somebody, you pay them. You are a good leader. You are a good businessman. You build something according to the contracts. Of course, this is Islam, but this is also humanity. But in ethics, we also have a level of Islamic ethics, which is the halal and haram. Humanity doesn't know that. So they could build a factory for beer, but we don't. They could have a machine that creates, Allah forbid, promiscuity and porn. We don't participate in that. They could design a software that use the AI in order to bomb people in Gaza. No, we cannot do that. Maybe they have a justification for that because they leave what is for Caesar, but we don't have that. We have particular Islamic rulings as Muslims, what we call the ahkam or the fiqh. Fiqh is much bigger than just the tashri'ah, but let us call it fiqh because this is the famous terminology, which is the fiqh of the ahkam, the halal and the haram in Islam. That is part of the ethics. And if your engineering has anything to do with that, in addition to what you do, you have to bring Islam in, and Islam has to be a red line. So the first level is the level of ethics. There has to be courses on engineering ethics, and engineering ethics has to be taught from an Islamic perspective. I remember when I was in Qatar Foundation, I was asked how can we Islamize the American universities that they hired to have campuses there in Qatar. And I suggested that ethics have to be Islamic. And it happened for a year or two before the Americans came back and removed the Islamic part of that, which is the, I gave lectures then at that time in different campuses. Texas A&M, we taught engineering ethics, but was from an Islamic perspective, was no longer from the American textbook. In Virginia, what's called Commonwealth University, we taught ethics of design. They had a design college, so ethics of design was now an Islamic course. In Cornell, which was a college of medicine in Qatar, we actually taught medical ethics from an Islamic point of view. So once you change the ethics courses in different universities to become Islamic ethics, then you are Islamizing the discipline. Medicine, engineering, design, what was that again? Journalism, there was a school of journalism, ethics. Then we started to teach from an Islamic perspective. And yes, there is a common ground with humanity. So in media, you have to be honest and you have to, yeah, sure. But there is also an Islamic part of that ethics course. So that's the first level, ethics. Second level is the level of economics. How can we take an economics Islamic approach to engineering? First of all, you have to know the economic model you are working in. And as I mentioned, this cannot be disciplinary. You have to go multidisciplinary. So we're going to mix economics now with engineering. You are designing a building or a bridge or an AI thing or a software. You are designing a hydraulics machine or a petroleum explosive thing or whatever it is. You have to be aware of the economic model of your design. And that economic model has everything to do with Islam, because it is going to tell you whether what you are doing is halal or haram. You're designing a software for Qibla, the Qibla software. They arrested some people I think in the UK. Why? They designed a Qibla software. Don't remember the name of the software. And then they realized that the Qibla software is actually spying on those 200,000 subscribers, and they are selling the information to the Pentagon, to the American army. That is the economic model. The Qibla, what's it called, Qibla 2, whatever the name of the software, you log in, it's for free. It's for free because you are the price. Your privacy, your information, your location, most of the thing on this iPhone is for free. But they are recording everything I say, and when I talk to my wife about perhaps we should visit the Maldives, I open the other computer and I find advertisements on the Maldives because I was just talking to her in the kitchen about Maldives. That is the price of having free software. Therefore, you have to be aware of the economic model of your engineering production. It is not for free, and it is not for the customer. I hear in some engineering colleges when I started to teach ethics, the students saying, I don't care, the customer tells me to design this, so I design it. And as long as they pay me the contract and I design it, I am ethical. And I say, no, you have to know the economic, where is this going? What is this part of the machine? Similar to this AI neural network thing, that at that time I was asked to sell for some drones and tanks back in the 90s. These things are very advanced now, much more advanced than we see on TV, by the way. This drone technology has been developed in America from the 60s, not just now, but anyway. So now when you talk about what is the drone, who's going to pay for it, and why are they paying, and why is the payment that much or that low? You know, those software people, apps, they are billionaires. Why? Facebook, why is Mark Zuckerberg a billionaire engineer, another engineer? Because he's selling your information. He's making a profile for everyone on earth that is important for governments, politics, for medical applications, the genetic stuff that they want to do, for marketing, for you name it, you name it. He is selling the information of people, and that's how he's a billionaire. The Facebook thing is for free, but you are the product, and you are, so you have to know the economic model of what you are doing, and you have to serve an Islamic cause with your economic model. It has to be part of serving the Ummah, serving, even if you design a building, you have to have the bigger picture. You are not just part of the machine. Yes, you are closest to the machine because you're an engineer, but make sure that what you are producing has a fair and Islamic ethical framework when it comes to the economic model. Secondly, be aware of the bigger picture, because engineering is a major part of the economies of today, and the economies of today are tied to the politics of today and tied to everything that is happening today. You have to know what the 1% is doing in this world. I mean by the 1%, the top 1% rich people in this world, who are now earning 90% of the outcome of every industry in this world. What we produce today as engineers or as whatever we produce in any industry, the profit, 90% of it, and in America it's close to 95 now, goes to the top 1% of the world. The, whatever, 10 million billionaires that we have in the world. We are looking to eat, basically, and to live. That's it, month to month. And the real profit goes to them. And whenever the Americans get stuck with their system because of the greed, they print money. They just print. You have to be aware of the economic system. Barack Obama got stuck with his system, so he printed $11 trillion, and he solved his problems. Who paid the $11 trillion? Everyone who has a dollar in his pocket, or a ringgit, or anything. We all paid the $11 trillion that Barack Obama gave for the banks. Why? Because the value of the dollar went down. When you print more, you have less value. The simple economic equation. And therefore, you have to be aware of the bigger picture. You have to be critical of capitalism, because that is the system that is driving most of our technology today. And that is the system that gives green light for particular technology and red light for other technologies. Read about the people who tried to change the paradigm, which is not my point number 5, in engineering, and read how capitalism suppressed the change of the paradigm. Read about Tesla, for example. Tesla has nothing to do with Elon Musk and his Tesla car, because Elon Musk is one of the 1% who rule the world because of their wealth. And his car, Tesla, even when he was asked, I was interested to see his reply when they asked him, has this anything to do with Tesla, scientist? He said, of course, yeah, he was creative and so on. But Tesla was not about electric cars, or Tesla was against the paradigm of the electricity networks. And he created technology that was able to charge by the electricity of the earth. And go read Tesla's papers if you are close to that specialization, and you will see that you can actually charge your phone with Tesla's technology. And there's a couple companies that do that in America, just small companies. And you don't need any of this. You don't need the whole paradigm of power engineering and electrical engineering in the bigger sense if you apply Tesla's technology. But at that time, what's his name, the billionaire, the American billionaire who funded Tesla, told him, no. If it doesn't sell, it doesn't work. So you have to produce something that we can sell. Not to tell me that I'm going to take electricity from the earth and communicate through the crust of the earth, and we don't need anything. He said, no, we need oil, we need, and so forth. Therefore, look at the bigger picture, look at capitalism, try to understand the problem with capitalism that we have, and how your product is compatible with Maqasid al-Sharia or any of that. You have to differentiate between the apologetic approach of Maqasid al-Sharia and the genuine approach. The apologetic approach is the same good old ethics and economics and politics and everything that you have to do with your design, but then say, oh yeah, it actually serves Maqasid al-Sharia. So it is the same software, like, Facebook people or Meta, whatever. Meta could claim that they are helping Maqasid al-Sharia by doing what? Oh, Hifz al-Din, yeah, we have Islamic websites, and okay, that's Hifz al-Din. Or Hifz al-Nafs, yes, because someone sent a message, I'm stuck here, saved my life, and they saved his life. Yalla, Hifz al-Nafs. Hifz al-Mal, yeah, because look, this guy made the $2,000 salary from Facebook, so Hifz al-Mal, yalla. Hifz al-Ard, that is not what Maqasid al-Sharia is supposed to be doing. Maqasid al-Sharia is supposed to be pre the design, not post the design. It is supposed to be in the objectives phase of the design, not post the same good old machine and software and the same good old bank and the same good old, and then we say it fulfills Maqasid al-Sharia. That is what I talk about and write about under the title apologism, Islamic apologism, in the sense that we are just putting a abaya on the bank. But the bank is the same good old capitalist riba bank. But we are just, putting a hijab on him. The same thing with the products that you do. You have to put Maqasid al-Sharia before the design to define for you why. Why are we designing that? The question of why is very important. Why do we have the discipline? And under the discipline, why am I designing this software? What are the objectives? And the objectives could be commercial, but they are not supposed to be the only objectives. This is not an Islamic approach. For you to be just a trader, a business person, I'm just doing this for the money. Your design has to fulfill a social goal, a political goal, an economic goal. Something has to do with Islam, because we cannot just be selling our brains and taking salaries for it without defining the objective of what we do. And if you are going to do that, Maqasid al-Sharia is not enough, because Maqasid al-Sharia is the objectives of the tashri', of the fiqh, but not the objectives of everything in life. Everything in life you have to go to Maqasid al-Quran. You have to look for the higher picture. Al-Quran is talking about a higher level of maqasid. Al-istikhlaf, for example, being a khalifa on earth. That is not from Maqasid al-Sharia, that is higher thinking. Al-Tawheed, right? It's not from Maqasid al-Sharia. Why? It's not because Maqasid al-Sharia doesn't have Tawheed. Of course it does. But Maqasid al-Sharia is for fiqh. And fiqh is after Tawheed. Nobody will come and ask you about fiqh if they are not Muslim, But Tawheed is very important for what you are building. You're building roads, you're designing cities, you are designing a software. Tawheed is part of what you're doing because you have an impact on that. Maqasid, al-adl, justice, al-qist, fairness, these are higher maqasid. The Quran will teach us that. The maqasid of al-umamiyya, the umam al-amthalikum, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that all the nations are nations like you, communities like you, animals are plants and insects and so on. As engineers, you are not studying biology, but you have an impact on biology. You have an impact on the environment, on the tree population, on the animals and species, on whatever it is, alhamdulillah. And therefore, it is important that you look at this umamiyya as part of your design. You cannot design something that goes against what Allah created subhanahu wa ta'ala as even if you design something that is technically a rifle or a weapon or a chemical thing that is going to be a pesticide or yes, but chemical engineering is not just give me this and I give you that. What are you doing with it? What is the objective of that chemical plant, or if you are going to mix for metallurgy or a new material or whatever it is, what is the cost on earth? How much is the earth paid? The economic system doesn't care about that. The economic system makes the earth pay more than everything else. And they are making the trillions because they make the earth pay. But as Muslims, we are not supposed to make the earth pay. Our objectives, part of it has to be to preserve earth. And this is not just the environment, clean air, and the North Pole is melting. This is white stuff. But with all due respect, this is just European stuff, let's put it this way. The earth is melting and stuff. But we have a deeper picture of the environment. It's not just about the snow melting and the bears dying and the stuff. It's not about that. It's about the corruption on earth. Al-fasadu fil ard. Are we doing islahu fil ard or fasadu fil ard? And engineers are the closest people to do islah in the earth or fasad in the earth by what they create. You create cities, you create machines, you create software, you create material, you know, and it is very important for you that your objectives are there. Finally, the paradigm. How can we do Islamic engineering, or how can we take an Islamic approach to engineering? To look at the paradigm. What is the underlying philosophy? Unfortunately, we don't have philosophy courses usually in engineering faculties, and we are always, it's difficult for us to absorb the philosophy material because we're not made for that. But try to educate yourself at least the underlying philosophy. There is nothing without philosophy. There is the dominant philosophy today is the materialist philosophy, the positivist philosophy, the secular religion. In the secular religion, people believe that truth is in the material matter. This is true because it is there, but the ideas are not true. This is just mythology, theology, metaphysics, whatever they call them in secular education. But in Islam, the truth is the word of Allah. And what we see in the world is art, is just something passing and could be an illusion. My material existence is an illusion, is a dream. It's just we're here on a journey, we're trying to do good, islah and not ifsad. We have an istikhlaf fil ard. But the real life, وَإِنَّ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ لَهِيَ الْحَيَوَانِ, the real life is there, is in the akhirah, not here in the dunya. And therefore we have a different paradigm. We do believe that an angel came to Muhammad ﷺ on that mountain and gave him a book. We believe in that. They don't, of course. Any secular person will say, oh yeah, that's religion, that is theology, even if they're Muslim. But they don't really think that an angel came to Muhammad and gave him a book. We believe that this is the truth, and only truth, in fact. And everything else is just a theory. You know better than I do. Gravity is not truth. Gravity is just a theory. There is a phenomena, something falls, but there are 5 different explanations. There is the gravity that developed in Bayt al-Hikmah, and Newton copied it, by the way, from the Latin translation, and he added some equations. And there is the space-time theory, and there is the black or the dark energy theory. There are like 5 different theories for gravity. Why? Because gravity is a phenomenon. But it's not a fact. The fact is the phenomenon. I see something falling. But how to explain it, which is the science upon which you build your engineering, it's just theories, and they change. The theories change. With time, every couple hundred years, 300 years, stable theories become old science, and we have new theories. Look at the underlying philosophy of what you're doing, and try to separate the theories from the fact in the underlying science. I know that engineering is above science, but in the underlying science, try to be critical about the epistemological basis or the knowledge basis of what you are doing. Finally, new horizons for technology is possible if we study the Quran with those eyes. In the Quran, matter is alive. Matter is not dead. Matter is dead, and al-aqil wa ghayr al-aqil, and so on. This is Greek philosophy. This is not Islam. Islam, everything is alive. And the mountains have a personality. And if they hear the Quran, if the Quran was revealed to them, they would crack. Allah said that the rocks on the mountain could break because of the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We believe that matter is alive. Einstein called it the spooky behavior of quantum particles, because he did not understand that the quantum particles are actually alive. And therefore they react to the observer because they are alive. This is, for example, one idea of new horizons for technology from an Islamic point of view. People who are disbelievers do not believe that matter is alive. They don't even believe that animals and plants are alive or have dignity or have consciousness. When I studied neuroscience, nobody in the neuroscience field believed that anything is consciousness, except for the Christians who believe that humans are conscious. But they didn't believe that plants are conscious, animals are conscious, let alone the wood and the metal and the mountains and the skies and the sun and the moon. They don't believe in consciousness. And they are the neuroscience people. Why? Because they have a Darwinian look at the world. So they are building, at that time, as I mentioned at the beginning of the lecture, I was an AI guy building some neural networks for whatever technology. We're building the technology with an underlying assumption that we are just chemistry. The brain is just chemistry. And when I studied the brain in order to copy some ideas from my PhD, I realized that the brain is not just chemistry, and that actually we don't make decisions here, we make decisions here. The Quran is telling us, and it was actually true, that this is the place of thinking. This is just a tool. A tool, you retrieve some memory, you do some processing for 3D, but decision making is here. Now neuroscientists are saying. And of course, those who say that in Western academia, they lose their jobs. Perhaps they should apply for you here and find a job here. They lose their jobs because they go against the paradigm. Those who say that cars do not need electricity or oil, they lose their jobs. Those who say that economics should not be based on fiat money, they lose their jobs. And people like me who say that Palestine should be free will lose their jobs too. You see, why? Because we are coming from a different paradigm, a political paradigm, an economic paradigm, a technology paradigm, and therefore we have to open also our understanding to the underlying philosophical paradigm and try to explore the new horizons of technology through our Islamic worldview and our Islamic framework, because I believe it's a very different framework that would have produced very different engineering. And inshallah, in the next phase of our civilization, and this university is one of the leaders of new Islamic thought, we inshallah hope from you to produce new ideas, and for your students and your researchers to actually start to push the horizons of science and of technology. I went a bit over my time, I apologize. Jazakallah khairan for inviting me again, and Jazakallah khairan for allowing me a long lecture, because I had a lot to say in that topic. And thank you. Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you for the insights, Prof. Jasser. So now I think we'd like to open for question and answer to the floors. Anybody? Yes, please.
Can I ask a question? Siapa dulu?
Ladies first. Ladies first.
Right, I have a question. For us, coming from engineering, and we are also not Arabs, we are from Malay, Arabic is not our language. So we have a few extra barriers compared to the Arabs in understanding the Quran and understand the Maqasid of the Quran. And to understand fiqh usul, and you are talking about multi-disciplinary and trans. So what is your advice to us? You know, we want to do it, but we have these challenges. So what is the shortcut, or if things to make it easier for us to understand and to fulfill the role that we are supposed to do? Thank you.
Barakallahu feekum. To do your research based on the Quran, you don't have to know Arabic. But your conceptual framework has to be Arabic. So you don't have to know the language fully and read the Quran fully. You could read a Malay translation. But even I noticed in the Bahasa Malay, when there are concepts, they are actually Arabic. Your Islamic language is Arabic, and that is the same. Like you say Hajj and Umrah and Salah and Zakah and Nikah and what was that again? Like Tawheed and Khalifa and this and Maqasid, and the terminology, the framework has to be Arabic, because Arabic is the language of the Quran, not because of the Arabs or the Arabic language necessarily. So look for the concepts that could develop your paradigm. Look for the how can you develop your paradigm based on the concepts of the Quran. And when you read the Quran in the English translation or Bahasa translation or any of that, you will also see these concepts, because they are the same for all Muslims, by the way. The same words that I mentioned in Bahasa are the same words in Swahili, in Turkish, in Farsi, in the Andalusian language of the past. Every language that is an Islamic language is actually has adopted the Islamic framework of concepts. They don't call riba anything but riba. They don't call zina, Allah forbid, or zawaj, talaq. It's the same words, because this is the Islamic paradigm. You need to look for the words that are relevant to your technology or your research in the Quran that are the framework of what you do, and avoid the words from the Latin origin or the Saxonian origin. Yes, the Latin and Saxonian are daughters of the Arabic language. That's a different lecture, but basically it's true. But then they developed over the past 1,000 years or two in a way that became very alien from the Arabic concepts. They are no longer, like if you read old Saxonian, it's very Arabic actually, you know. But now English is not exactly related to Arabic that much, because it developed quite a bit. So avoid the English and Latin terminology and try to adopt Arabic terminology for the framework of what you do. Similar to our social talk, we use Islamic terms, as I mentioned, zawaj, talaq, etc. Social talk, inshallah. But also try to learn Arabic. Not sure, depending on the age. I remember I was telling you when I went to Canada, immigrated to Canada early 90s, I didn't speak English at all, actually, zero. I didn't understand anything when I first went to the university. But then you learn the language, you know, so it's possible. But in your 20s perhaps now, but not in the 50s or 60s like me, it would be more difficult, more difficult.
I have many questions. In fact, I don't know if you allow me. I say all of them, then you choose whatever you like.
Allah yakrimak. I will leave my email, inshallah, if you want to email me. Ahlan wa sahlan.
You mentioned that during Sayyidina Umar time, he was the alim and the leader.
Yes.
Then after 1 century, separated into ulama and the leaders. What was the reason for that? Why they didn't continue the same model? The second one, you mentioned that to Islamize the knowledge or engineering, we have to filter them for these 5. Is it possible after filtering we Islamize? Third one, you said that being part of machine, we must apply our approach for the Maqasid Sharia, whatever. I am a small engineer in big machine. Do you think I am aware of the Maqasid Sharia? First of all, I am Muslim. But I'm not aware of the Sharia, Maqasid Sharia. Secondly, if I am in bad need to the job, do you think I risk to lose my job by saying, okay, maybe this one difficult, to decide on that one. Then the last one, what is your opinion about the hypocrite West? Hypocrite West, because you mentioned about Tesla. I sympathize with this guy, although he's not Muslim, but I like him. But you see, Tesla get like very tough challenge from West, starting with Edison, ending with Einstein when he denied his theory and he found some problem in his theory. Also, something happened to Landau. Also, Landau he mentioned to what's your opinion about hypocrite West? Thank you. I have two more. I escaped.
I will leave my email, inshallah, and we can meet. I come to Gombak sometimes. I'm in the KL campus, but I come here sometimes. We can have a coffee and talk. I'm here. No problem, inshallah. See, the ulama and the umara, first of all, why were they separated? It's basically when the Khilafah was transferred into a kingdom, historically speaking. So during the Khilafah, there was no difference between the king and the scholar, the Khulafa al-Rashidin. And then we all know the fitna between the Sahaba, and then Muawiyah ibn Abu Sufyan came the next Khalifa. But then Muawiyah, after him, it became a kingdom. It became his son, and then their son, and then their cousin. So when it became a kingdom, when the kingdom became an empire, it did not allow the scholars to intervene and we have this until today. Until today, the scholars are not allowed to intervene in the political work. And that's why Abu Hanifa died in prison, and Ibn Taymiyyah died in prison, and Shafi'i also went to prison and had his share of beating and so on. And Imam Ahmad, every scholar who said to the Emir, this is right and this is wrong, they either killed them or lashed them until today. So it's the same good old story. That is the reason, politics. Is it possible to Islamize after this? Yes, I believe that these five are 5 levels of Islamization. You can Islamize on the level of ethics, so that what you are doing is ethical, even if it's the same thing. Secondly, you can Islamize by changing the economics of what you are doing, whether the economic model or the bigger economic system that you are trying to change, towards Islamic goals, Islamic economic goals. Thirdly, the politics, whether you are going to serve a legal or policy framework that is Islamic, that is compatible with Islam, serve Islamic cause, or not. You are actually doing a machine that is going to serve other politics, or a war that is from the Islamic point of view, or a war from the Kufr point of view. You are making a machine, and that machine could be used by Muslims and could be used by non-Muslims. And next is the objectives, is why are you deciding to design this, and why is your profession, and why, the questions of why, whether you answer them through the legal framework of Maqasid al-Sharia or the wider framework of Maqasid al-Quran. As I mentioned, istikhlaf, wal-istimar, wal-taqwa, wal-tawheed, wal-tazkiyah, these things, the bigger picture of the Quran. And fifth, the paradigm, or we call it in the West, basic science, the basic science, the fundamental research that we are doing, the philosophy of our systems, if we also Islamize them by thinking about Islamic perspective. So if we go at any of these levels, we are actually Islamizing engineering. And as I mentioned, I don't like Islamic engineering. I think engineering is engineering. And I think our model is good even for Muslims. If they take our model, not just for family and for morality and so on, and of course for Aqidah, if they take our model for engineering and for medicine, it's a better model for humanity. So that's what I think. Thirdly, I'm not aware of the Maqasid. I'm just a guy who has a job. I want to keep my job. That's fine. I am talking here at the level of research, at the level of changing the paradigm. This is like high-level university kind of level that is going to filter down to that guy who's just want to keep his job. But it will take time. It will take time until our talk here would perhaps make a change in one of the systems, and then the system becomes a company, and the company has a product, and now we are hiring an engineer. That engineer has nothing to do with all of this. He's just a guy who wants to get married and have a job. So simple lives are going to continue to be simple lives. But as professors and thinkers here in this room, I am suggesting this high level of thinking for us to perhaps try to shake the current system from the foundation, try to change, because that's our task too, as people who think at a higher level. And the Munafiq West, I prefer to separate between the Muslim West and the non-Muslim West. The Muslim West, and I would also say the decent West, is a very big part of the West. And perhaps you could see it now in the Muslim world by what's happening in Palestine. Millions of people are going out in England itself, which is the mother of the current empire. You know, they are the ones who stole the world and looted the world. There are millions of them in the streets saying free Palestine. This is very different from the past. So I would not label the empire as necessarily Western empire. It is more the, if you wish, the white supremacy Anglo-American now. Even Europeans are no longer part of the empire. Now recently, they are no longer. The Europeans are lost now. So there's just the white supremacy Anglo-American. That is a very accurate description. And the white supremacy Anglo-American empire, yes, is hypocrite. They make a car and they say they save the environment. But the same company, that company of, what's his name, Musk, he is destroying the environment in a major way. His companies, where is he getting his billions from? From destroying the environment, and from the wars, and from everything in the book, like you see. So there is hypocrisy there, because on the one hand, they talk about human rights, and animal rights, and women's rights, and child rights, and so on. And on the other hand, they are killing people. In Africa, tens of millions. First of all, in America, they killed about 90 million people in order to make America great the first time. George Washington was called by the natives the town destroyer. So the town destroyer is now the name of the guy that they named the capital after in Washington. And from that history, they have a history of annihilation of populations. And they might have their cracks. So the Nazi West versus the, again, Anglo-American, but there was a crack. There is a crack now between the Russian West and the European West. But these are small cracks. The whole civilization from North America and Europe, East and West, this is a whole genocidal civilization. This is how it works. And this is how they built their empire. In Africa and in Asia, you had other occupiers in this part, the Japanese at some point, and the Russians. But this is how it works. So I agree with you, but I just have a reservation on the name West, because I think there's a lot of good in the West. From October 7 until today, the latest statistics is that we have 500,000 new Muslims in Europe and North America. So when you have 500,000 new Muslims who are entering Islam in a very different way from the previous people, I think 10 years from now you will see major changes because of these people. Because most of them are not Arabized or Malaysiized or Indianized or any of that. They are Western people. They are totally American, French, British, whatever, Netherlands kids. But they decided that Islam is a good way of life. And I am sure that they will bring a major change in the West in the next couple of decades, inshallah. Come over.
Thank you. Yes, please. So.
Thank you very well, thank you for this very informative matter today. Yesterday, Prof. Dawood take us to the shore, and today you put us inside sea water.
Inshallah.
Yeah. At the beginning, many people are quite sure that they get lost, but little by little people could understand, because you are the most two relevant people to our understanding about engineering, ethics, and engineering education, etc. My point here, I guess I want to bring you back again to our engineering. One of the things that normally in engineering here, people here are task-oriented. Would that be meaning to say that people talk about learning outcome, objective outcome, people talk about accreditation? How could I infuse all of those engineering Islamic values inside our courses? So this is the point that we really would like to listen from your own side of view. Meaning to say what I'm quite sure Dr. Dawood Hilabi today is going to explain to us more about that. And yesterday, really, he gave very good talk. And today I'm quite sure he's going to continue. And you are also one of the most relevant to us, since you have both sides, engineering and philosophical issues. Because sometimes when we bring people from higher age, we get completely lost. We can't understand what those people talk about. Really, we get lost. I'm quite sure all of you know that. Even last time when Dr. Kamal Hassan, he looked at us and said, I guess you get lost. I told him, yes, that we get lost. Yes, he knows that. But today, even we get lost, but you bring us back again from those 5 points, then you start to give it to us exactly. So now my idea, how could I put those 5 points from ethics, from objective, from etc. inside our courses? This is my
Barakallah feek. I was happy to see Prof. Dawood on the program, and I'm honored to share the panel with him of this seminar. And alhamdulillah that he gave you a lot of good ideas. Inshallah, you continue to do that. Barakallah feek. Assalamu alaikum. On the other hand, yes, I know the task-oriented engineering mind. I used to be like that. And then I got lost, mixed with many things. I guess no longer task-oriented. I think the best way is to not to get lost with the details. IRH people come from a different planet. It's not a planet engineering. It's just different history and different terminology. So I understand. But I think it's important that we have practical workshops. So curriculum design workshops from the design of the bigger program. And I could help with that. I'm here for 25 and 26, inshallah, with ISTAC. And I live close to ISTAC there, but I come here, no problem, going back, it's a short ride. So if you would like to think about that, I was personally involved in a design of universities in Turkey, in South Africa, in Canada. I was a rector of an Islamic university there, new one, founding rector. So what I'm saying is I have some experience in terms of the design of a curriculum. So if we are going to put the paths that the student is going to take on a blackboard, and then see how can that student have some Islamic education in addition to these courses. What are the optional courses for, and what are the obligatory courses and university requirements? So something that we can suggest to the Senate if you would like. So that's one level of thinking. The other level is more on the course-by-course curriculum design kind of thing. So we have a course, we should start with the courses of ethics and management, the courses that have to do with social sciences. We should start with those courses for sure, like the ethics of engineering, and I don't know if you have operating systems or management, or I don't know, I haven't taught engineering for many years now. So if you have some of these, there is a lot of Islamic content there, and textbooks. We have textbooks in Islamic management and Islamic ethics, and we have, there is resources that we just need to remove the American textbooks and put the textbooks. As I mentioned, the experiment we did in Qatar at that time, just remove the American textbooks and put the Islamic textbooks. And voila, you have an Islamic approach to ethics and so on. But then the more difficult course would be the more technical courses. So software engineering, if you have a software department here, so here we go.
We will book you.
Or book me, okay. The latest language I know is, I don't know, Fortran and Java. I don't know what happened now with, that was a long time ago, but I could try to help with software. So, but basically, if we have a technical program, we could have a workshop, even a small one, like with the professors who teach software, introduction to whatever. How can we bring Islamic ideas here? How can we try to, at least the economic paradigm? They should be aware that software, who's going to spend on the software, and why is it going to sell? So that at least when they become engineers, they don't sell private information, they don't do something haram, at least, so that their engineering profession is not destructive to the world, and it's more good, yeah. So we can do that. That's what I think is specialized workshops, inshallah.
Right? Is there any more?
How we can define Islamic line from an Islamic line?
Islamic
Line.
line?
I am mathematician. I am teaching.
Oh, yeah, wow.
That's a
Okay.
big challenge to
Oh, mashallah.
Islamize the line, straight
Mashallah.
line.
I just want to.
So Islamize the Euclid then. Maybe make a jama.
Actually, sorry, I'm just going to put my email. Yeah, that's my email. How to Islamize mathematics. That is very interesting. When I was in Waterloo, we had something called the Mathematics College. Actually, the mathematics in the University of Waterloo was not a department. It was actually a college. And I was interested in that college. It was the building next to us. I would visit sometimes and see what these people like, a college, a whole college. Under that, we had a department of numbers theory. We had a department of what was that again? Series, like departments on like basic philosophical issues of mathematics, calculus, etc. Departments under mathematics. So and they were very advanced, and these people worked in all sorts of industries in Canada, usually gambling and this and politics and stuff. So I think part of it could go under this, like the ethics of it. So you are working in numbers theory. Are you using this for gambling, or are you using it for something that is better? And the economics of it as well, the economic paradigm of what you do, the political paradigm, the objectives. Mathematics itself, I think, is mostly Islamic so far, because the foundation of the science was developed in Baghdad, really. The algebra and the algorithms and so on. So at some point, I think I taught a course on algorithms, theory of algorithms back in Canada. And I found myself, the students were shocked when I went and brought al-Khwarizmi and what he said. And I told them, this is the guy that, from the name of the course and so on. Of course, the university did not allow me to teach after that the same courses, because I made them fascinated with Islamic civilization through the basic algebra. Jabir ibn Hayyan al-Khwarizmi, at that time, I looked for the manuscripts and I showed them. So mathematics, I think, I'm not an expert, but I think it's largely Islamic. Yeah, so from that time, Allah. That's my email, please, anytime, ahlan wa sahlan, underscore istak@iom.edu.my. That's right.
Right, thank you again, Prof. I think we should stop right here. Then if anybody else have any more questions, then you can contact Prof. Jasser straight away. And thank you again, Professor, for sharing us your insight about the issues of Islamizing the engineering.
Capital or small? Small or capital?
It doesn't matter, P capital or small.
Doesn't matter?
No, it doesn't matter. Computer science people will tell you here that it doesn't matter with emails. I think it...
Password, yes, but with the name.
Oh yeah, the password, it matters with the password only, but I think capital or small, it doesn't matter.
Right, thank you again.